At exactly 6:04 a.m., someone tried to tow my car out of my own driveway, with me still inside it. The driver muttered something about HOA clearance violations, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. What he didn't know, what Karen didn't know, was that I'd just found the one document that could end her entire empire. 3 days earlier, I'd been blindsided with an eviction notice delivered by armed guards. Now they were taking my vehicle, disconnecting my water, and telling the neighbors I was some kind of squatter. But this wasn't just a case of HOA overreach. This was a coordinated land grab, and I was standing between Karen and a multimillion-dollar development deal. They thought they'd wear me down like they did my grandfather. But what they didn't count on was that I'm a forensic accountant. And I don't back down. But before we dive into this insane story of corruption, stolen land, and one woman's desperate power trip, do me a quick favor. If you're watching this and rooting for the little guy, hit that like button to help this story reach more people. And make sure to subscribe. We've got new HOA Karen stories dropping every single day, and trust me, they get even wilder. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, let's rewind a bit. Because this all started when I inherited my grandfather's old cabin in Maple Grove Shores. I hadn't set foot in Maple Grove Shores in over 20 years. When I was a kid, summers at Grandpa Walter's cabin were the highlight of my life. Late-night bonfires, fishing at dawn, the smell of pine in the air so thick you could taste it. Then my parents divorced, things got messy, and the cabin just faded into the past. When Grandpa died last winter, I inherited the property. It was the only thing he left me, not that I cared about the value. I wanted the memories, the silence, the damn peace. I work in forensic accounting, which basically means I live knee-deep in other people's financial messes. So after a brutal tax season, I figured I'd escape to the one place that ever felt like mine. I packed a bag, grabbed some tools, and made the 5-hour drive to Maple Grove. The cabin was almost exactly how I remembered it. Weathered A-frame, peeling green paint, the same saggy porch swing Grandpa used to fall asleep on with a fishing rod in his hand. Inside smelled like cedar and ash. It was dusty, but it felt like home. The first night I sat out on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping cheap beer, listening to crickets and lake water. No clients. No deadlines. Just peace. I had no idea that 36 hours later, I'd be standing barefoot in that same doorway, holding an eviction notice and trying not to scream. It happened fast. I was still in my pajamas, hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee, when 3 men in black tactical gear pounded on the front door like it owed them money. Leo Sanderson, the tallest one, barked. Yeah. We're with the Maple Grove Shores Homeowners Association. This property is in violation of Boundary Code 4C and waterline easement regulations. You have 48 hours to vacate or face legal action and fines exceeding $25,000. I laughed. I actually laughed. My grandfather owned this cabin since the 60s, I said. There must be a mistake. The man handed me a thick envelope like I'd just been subpoenaed and shrugged. Take it up with Miss Karen Delaney. HOA office opens at 9. They left in a white SUV that looked more like a military vehicle than a community car. It had Maple Grove Shores Community Oversight Division stenciled on the side. I watched it disappear down the road with my stomach in knots. I walked down to the dock to clear my head. It was still there, our old dock. Rotted in places but standing. Grandpa had built it with his own hands, plank by plank. I remembered holding the hammer for him when I was 10, thinking I was helping. I didn't realize someone was watching me until I heard a voice. You must be Walter's grandson. I turned. An older man with a white beard and sun-damaged skin offered his hand. Name's Hank. My cabin's next door. Your granddad and I used to fish together every Tuesday like clockwork. I told him what just happened. Hank's face tightened. Figures. That'd be Karen. She's been gunning for this land for years. What do you mean? She runs the HOA like a mafia boss. Ever since her real estate company bought up half the shore, she's been trying to push out the old-timers. He pointed at my dock. That thing? She's been renting it out behind your back. $200 a day to tourists. You didn't know? I stared at the dock. No, I didn't know. I spent the rest of the day digging through Grandpa's old documents. Receipts, yellowed maps, handwritten notes. I found a leather folder labeled Maple Grove, Original Survey. Inside was a 1971 plat map that clearly showed our property line extending to the lake, including dock access. Their new map said we encroached 30 feet into community shoreline. I cross-checked the coordinates. Guess what? They lied. That night I found Grandpa's old journal. In the back was a note written in shaky cursive. Leo, they're going to come for this land after I'm gone. Don't let them bully you. The truth is in the documents. He was right. And I wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, I drove into town with a folder full of my grandfather's documents. It was early, the kind of early where the coffee's still bitter and the sunlight hasn't made up its mind yet. I made copies of everything. The 1971 survey, the plat maps, Grandpa's journal entries, all of it. On the way out of the print shop, I nearly ran into someone crouched next to a trail marker by the woods near my property. She wore cargo pants, a camera slung over one shoulder, and boots caked in red clay. Before I could ask what she was doing, she looked up and waved. "You must be Leo," she said. "I'm Ellery. I live 2 cabins up, behind the spruce grove." Then she paused. "Shanley said you might need an ally." Shanley. That was Hank's last name. The old fisherman. Ellery explained she was an environmental attorney, moved to Maple Grove Shores after inheriting her aunt's cabin. "Karen showed up a week after I moved in," she said. "Told me my shed was 6 inches over the property line. She threatened a $10,000 fine unless I tore it down." "What did you do?" "I sued," she said, smiling. "She dropped it and left me alone ever since." Then she tapped her camera. "Now I just document things. Especially new construction. Karen's been building without proper permits for years." I showed her my grandfather's survey. Her eyebrows shot up. "This shows your lot runs straight to the water, including the cove where they're building that new community dock." She flipped the map. "That's prime access. Deep water. Perfect for a marina." I already knew that part, but hearing it from her made it real. Back at the cabin, I started comparing the new HOA-approved maps with my grandfather's records. Everything about Karen's version was off: lot angles, shoreline distances, even the number of trees marked along the boundary line. It was like someone had photoshopped reality. That night I combed through Grandpa's journal again. Near the back was an entry from 4 years ago. "Karen came by again today. Offered to buy the land, cash, said it was for lake revitalization. I refused. She smirked and said, 'You won't always be here to stop progress.' Something about her scares me. I've filed for boundary reassessment just in case." I stared at the entry, then bolted upright and opened the file cabinet again. There it was, a carbon copy of a county reassessment request, dated 6 months before Grandpa passed. I called the assessor's office the next morning. A kind-sounding woman confirmed the reassessment had been approved and finalized 3 weeks before his death, and matched the original 1971 boundaries. I asked her to send a certified letter. She said it would arrive in 3 to 5 days. That letter would be my bulletproof vest. That afternoon, the white SUV returned. 3 people stepped out this time: Karen herself in a beige pantsuit and sunglasses, and 2 clipboard guys who looked like realtors with attitude. Karen didn't knock. She just marched right onto the deck like she owned the place. "Mr. Sanderson," she said flatly, "this is an official site inspection. Your dock lacks updated registration. That railing is below code. Also, your vehicle was improperly parked during overnight hours. That's a violation of Section 6C. You'll find the ticket in your mailbox." I didn't move. "I'd like to see the documents that override my grandfather's deed." Karen's jaw tightened. "Those records were superseded by community guidelines in 2019. This area has changed, Mr. Sanderson." She gestured at the lake like she had designed it. "I have the reassessment documents on the way from the county," I said. "Your maps are wrong." For a split second, her expression changed. Not fear. Not guilt. Annoyance. Like someone whose lunch order had been made wrong. "Then I suggest you present them at the next HOA meeting," she said coolly. "But be warned, non-compliance penalties accumulate daily." She left, but one of her assistants stayed behind to photograph my bird feeder. I watched him take 10 photos of it. 10. That night, I looked up Karen's development company. It took less than 5 minutes to find the renderings. There it was, Lakeside Grove Luxury Condominiums. Projected to redefine Maple Grove Shores as a premier destination. And guess where the private yacht marina was going? Right in the cove that my grandfather's survey said we owned. They needed that cove. Without it, the condos were just overpriced boxes with a pond view. With it, they could charge millions. And I was in the way. 3 days later, the letter arrived. Thick envelope. Official county seal. Inside, confirmation that the reassessment had been approved and filed. The map matched Grandpa's 1971 survey exactly. And it explicitly said, "Lot number 14, owned by Leo Sanderson, extends to the natural shoreline and includes full riparian rights." That meant the land, and the water, were legally mine. I sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at that sentence. Then I smiled. Not a big smile. One of those quiet ones. The kind you make when you know the tide just shifted in your favor. That evening was the monthly HOA meeting. The community center sat on a hill above the lake, part country lodge, part real estate trap. Inside it was slick stone floors and exposed beams, the kind of place meant to impress investors, not neighbors. Maybe 25 people were seated in neat rows. Karen sat up front with her board, a lineup of stiff collars and colder expressions. She looked like a senator. Hair perfect. Blazer white. Smile, weaponized. The meeting began with a drone. Updates on landscaping budgets, dock rental revenues, vague mentions of community enhancement. And then Karen said, "Any new business?" I stood. "I'd like to address the board regarding a boundary dispute," I said. "Lot 14, the Sanderson property." Karen's jaw clenched, but she kept smiling. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sanderson, this isn't the venue for private disputes," she said sweetly. "You can file a request with our compliance officer." I held up the county documents. Bylaw 5.3 states that if a boundary dispute affects HOA land use, it can be brought to a public meeting. She froze. "I have official certification from the county assessor," I continued, confirming that my property includes the entire shoreline adjacent to the new dock. I turned toward the crowd. Which, by the way, is currently being rented to tourists without the owner's consent. Murmurs. Glances exchanged. One guy in a golf shirt actually mouthed, "Holy shit." Karen's lawyer, a guy named Morton Price who looked like he lived inside a filing cabinet, leaned over and whispered something. Karen's voice wobbled for the first time. "We'll review your claims and respond through the proper legal channels." I wasn't done. "I've also documented trespassing, surveillance equipment installed without consent, and interference with utility access. If this continues, I'll file formal charges." Gasp. Someone in the back clapped once, awkwardly, then stopped. Karen stood. "This meeting is adjourned." She tried to leave, but half the room stayed behind, watching me. An older woman in a cardigan touched my arm. "We've all been afraid of her," she said softly. "But maybe it's time someone pushed back." I walked out into the cool night, the county letter folded in my coat. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, I woke up to find my water shut off. No warning. No notice. A bright orange slip was taped to my door. Temporary disruption due to emergency infrastructure upgrades. Service to resume in 2 to 4 weeks. I called the water company. HOA requested the shutoff, the guy said. Said there was a safety issue with your plumbing. There was no safety issue. I knew exactly what this was. Retaliation. I called Ellery. She showed up an hour later with a portable water filter, 3 solar panels, and a folding toolkit that looked like it could dismantle a tank. "This is how they break people," she said, connecting wires like she was defusing a bomb. "Last year they did the same thing to the Jenkins family. They gave up after 5 days. "Well," I said, "they'll need more than 5. That night, we sat by the fire pit eating canned chili and drinking beer from thermoses. "You're not just blocking a dock," Ellery said. "You're blocking the dock. That cove is everything." She showed me a zoning map. Karen's condos? The only thing that makes them luxury is exclusive water access. Take that away. She drew a red X through the marina. And it all collapses. 2 days later, I got a visit from a man named Ray Mercer, Maple Grove's Harbor Authority. I'd filed a formal inquiry about my water rights. He was here to follow up. Ray looked like someone who fished before breakfast. Weathered skin. No-nonsense tone. He examined the county documents. Cross-checked them against shoreline permits. Then said 4 words that made me sit up straight. "You're 100% in the right." He nodded at the dock. "That thing shouldn't be there without your signature. HOA never filed an easement. They've been operating off assumption, not law." He rubbed his jaw. "Karen's not gonna like this." "She already doesn't," I muttered. Ray smiled. "Good. Then maybe we're getting somewhere." It happened at 4:42 a.m. I woke to a rumble outside. At first I thought it was thunder. But then I saw headlights flicker through the trees, and the metallic clank of a winch line. They were towing my car. I ran out in nothing but pajama pants and boots, waving my arms. Hey. The tow truck driver didn't even look surprised. "Got a work order from the HOA," he said, flipping through a clipboard. "Vehicle parked in restricted access zone." I stared at him. "That's my driveway." He shrugged. "Talk to Karen." He had almost raised the wheels when I stood in front of the truck and said one word. "Sheriff." He paused. "Look man, I'm just doing my job. You're stealing my car." That made him uncomfortable. After a long pause, he climbed down and unhooked the chain. "Don't shoot the messenger," he muttered. By the time he drove away I was shaking. But not from fear. From rage. I walked back up to the house, fists clenched, and stopped dead at the sight of something new. My front door was unlocked. Wide open. And the inside of the cabin wasn't how I left it. Drawers were pulled out. Cushions flipped. Photo frames missing from the wall. Someone had gone through my things. The air smelled like latex gloves and cheap cologne. I checked every room, every box, every folder. Grandpa's journal? Still there. County documents? Safe. But half my clothes were gone. Tools. My laptop. On the table, a single page lay face up. Notice of HOA repossession. Due to repeated violations, this structure is subject to forced reclamation under Article 8B. Property has been secured. Access is now restricted. They had locked me out of my own home. No court order. No hearing. Just HOA paper, a couple rent-a-cops and Karen's signature. I tried calling the sheriff. Voicemail. I tried again. Still voicemail. Hours passed before someone finally answered, a deputy with the enthusiasm of a dead fish. "Looks like a civil matter," he drawled. "HOA says you're in violation. They filed paperwork." "That doesn't make it legal," I snapped. "Take it up with a judge." Click. By sunset I had nowhere to sleep. Nowhere to go. My clothes and most of my belongings were in a storage pod with Karen's company logo on it, Cypress Development Group. I sat in my car, parked on a dirt turnoff by the lake, and stared at nothing for a long time. This wasn't a property dispute anymore. This was war. And for the first time since it all began, I wondered if I could actually win. I called my mother. I hadn't done that in years. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was warm but tired. "Leo? I don't know what to do," I said, my throat tight. "They took everything." We talked for a long time. She told me Grandpa would be proud. She also said something I didn't expect. "Maybe it's time to walk away, sweetheart. Your grandfather wouldn't want you destroyed over this." That almost broke me. But I didn't hang up angry. I hung up empty. Until the knock on the window. I turned, startled. "Ellery." "I figured you'd be here," she said gently. "Come with me." She took me to her cabin, a cozy A-frame tucked between two giant spruce trees. Warm lighting. The smell of soup. And at her table, Hank. And two other neighbors I barely knew. They looked at me like I'd just come back from war. Because in a way I had. "We heard what happened," said one of them. "A woman named Nancy, hair in curlers. She pulled the same stunt with my brother. Took his dock, fined him daily for a boat he didn't even own. She ran me off the HOA board," Hank said. "I asked too many questions. Over bowls of stew and fresh bread they shared stories. Stories of fines for too many sunflowers. Stories of cars towed during funerals. Stories of threats, cold calls, silent visits at night. Every single story ended the same. Someone gave up. Sold cheap. Moved out. Karen bought their land. And built. This is systematic," Ellery said. "It's not petty power tripping. It's a real estate scheme." She handed me a flash drive. Development plans. Public records. Permits filed under dummy corporations. She's flipped 20 properties in 5 years. You're just the last holdout in the cove. That word again, the cove. It always came back to the water. And then Hank said something that made everything click. "Your granddad knew this was coming," he said. "He told me before he died, if Leo ever ends up in a fight, give him the clock." He handed me a package. Inside was a dusty old wall clock, the kind with swinging pendulums and Roman numerals. But inside was a hidden camera. A note taped to the back read, "Sometimes you have to show people what happens when they think no one's watching." Grandpa. I held the clock in my lap, stunned. All this time, Grandpa wasn't paranoid. He was preparing me. He knew Karen would come. He knew they'd try to bury the truth. And he left me the one thing that would burn it all down. Proof. I was done playing defense. It was time to go on the offensive. The next morning, I filed for an emergency injunction against the HOA. Cited illegal eviction, trespassing, theft of personal property. Ellery called in a favor from a judge she'd worked with on a wetlands case. We got a hearing scheduled within 48 hours. But I needed more than legal language. I needed proof. So I mounted Grandpa's hidden camera on a bookshelf across from the cabin's front door, pointed directly at the living room. Then I waited. It didn't take long. That same afternoon, while I was helping Hank repair his fence across the road, a black SUV pulled up. Karen stepped out in high heels and sunglasses, flanked by two contractors from Cypress Development. They didn't knock. They used a key. And they didn't just snoop, they rummaged. Ripped open drawers. Scanned folders. Opened boxes of family photos. One of the men asked, "What exactly are we looking for again?" Karen's reply was caught loud and clear. "Anything that proves he owns the Shoreline. Surveys, deeds, notes. I want this place stripped clean before he gets back in." They took framed pictures off the walls. My laptop. Grandpa's old coin collection. Stuff with zero monetary value, just memory. And they left, hauling boxes like it was moving day. I had it all on tape. The next day at court, the judge was clearly skeptical at first. Typical small-town posture, reluctant to step into HOA drama. But then I played the footage. Silence filled the courtroom as Karen's voice echoed through the speakers. "I don't care what violations you have to create, just get him out." The judge didn't blink. Within 5 minutes, he granted the injunction. Ordered the HOA to restore utilities, return my possessions, and stay off my property. He even assigned a deputy to escort me back to the cabin. The look on the security guard's face when the sheriff's car pulled up behind me? Priceless. But the next move was mine. I wasn't done. That night, I took down the community dock. Not out of spite, out of law. The structure extended 30 feet into water I legally controlled, according to riparian rights. I dismantled it section by section, carefully stacking the panels beside my own rebuilt dock. In the morning, all the rental boats were haphazardly crammed into the public marina on the other side of the lake. Karen's operation? Paralyzed. And that same afternoon, the next HOA meeting. I wasn't invited. Didn't matter. I showed up anyway. The room was packed, more residents than I'd seen at any meeting before. The air was tense. Half the faces I didn't recognize. Some had clipboards. One had a camera. Karen was already on stage, flanked by her lawyer, Morton Price. She was mid-sentence when I walked in, holding a thick binder and a small projector. "Mr. Sanderson, this meeting is closed," she started. "Then why are you voting on a special assessment to fund a lawsuit against me?" I asked calmly. That shut her up. I plugged in the projector. "I suggest before you all vote to fork over $3,000 per household, you take a look at what your president has been doing with your money." I clicked play. First, screenshots of Karen's development renderings, including the luxury marina built exactly on my shoreline. Then, zoning maps showing how the new HOA maps conveniently redrew the boundaries around my land. And finally, the video. Karen, on tape, instructing her staff to take everything that looks important. Murmurs erupted. One woman gasped. A man stood up and said, "Is that your living room?" Karen tried to interrupt, but I raised a hand. "I've also documented over $600,000 in HOA fees transferred to Cypress Development under the guise of landscape upgrades. And not one receipt for where that money went." That was the match. Suddenly the room came alive. "Where's our money, Karen? You said those fees were for roads. You took his stuff?" Karen's face flushed red. She stood up, trembling. "You ungrateful people," she snapped. "Do you think I like doing this? I've carried this community for years. Those decaying cabins were dragging down property values. I was saving this place." Silence. And then she said it. The fatal line. "Once the condos are built, property values will triple, and all the riffraff who can't afford it will finally be gone." That moment froze in time. Someone in the back started recording with their phone. Karen realized it a second too late. The board voted on the spot. No confidence. Karen Delaney, removed as HOA president. Unanimous. Her lawyer slunk out the side door. Karen tried to argue. No one listened. That night, my inbox filled with messages from neighbors. Some angry. Some ashamed. But most, supportive. They'd been afraid. Now they weren't. Karen's grip had snapped. Karen vanished from the lake within a week. First, her development company crumbled when the investors saw the footage. Then the county opened an investigation into HOA fraud. Her house. For sale to cover legal fees. And someone named Karen D. started a profile on New Life in Nevada. My dock is now legally protected. The HOA? Under new leadership. And the lake? Quiet again. The way Grandpa loved it. The real victory wasn't just getting my cabin back. It was watching neighbors come out of the shadows and take their power back. This morning, I mailed a framed copy of my property survey to Karen's new address. Attached was a note. Always read the fine print. Smash that like if you think every Karen should get what's coming. And hit subscribe. You won't believe what happened in the next story.